Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Afternoon. Those of you who don't know me, I'm Professor Linda Bilmes here at the Kennedy School, and welcome to the forum. I'd like to welcome the organizations and student groups who are co-sponsoring tonight's guest, the Fuerza Latina, the Harvard College Raza, Concilio Latino, the Native Americans at Harvard College, the Harvard Republican Club, Latinas Unidas, the Kennedy School's Latino Caucus, the Kennedy School Center for Public Leadership, and Alana. Thank you to everybody who is here from those organizations, many of which I've worked with, and they're really great organizations. Tonight, we come together to talk about the future of the Peace Corps, which is one of the proudest accomplishments and legacies of the man and presidency from which our school derives its name. As you know, the Kennedy School draws a number of its students from the Peace Corps. And I've had in my classes students who work all over the world in the Peace Corps. And I have to say that everyone has been a really exceptional student and has felt that the Peace Corps changed their lives completely and fundamentally. And we are very pleased to be joined by the 16th director of the Peace Corps this afternoon. And I'm proud to note that he is the first Hispanic American to serve in that post. He has a career that has had many firsts. He started in public service over 22 years ago, serving as a police officer in Orange County, California. He then served as an appointee by California Governors Pete Wilson and George Duke Majan. President George Herbert Walker Bush appointed him to several federal commissions in the late 80s and early 90s. His professional and civic activities are many, but over the years they range from the Salvation Army, where he was on the National Advisory Board, to the Board of Directors of the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials. He's a native of Texas and the son of migrant workers, and he is the first member of his family to earn a college degree. One of his proudest accomplishments is that under his leadership, the Peace Corps, there are more volunteers serving in the field now than in the past 28 years. And I have to say, as a professor of budget, to not only achieve that, but to be able to get the budget money to expand the Peace Corps is really a heroic leadership. Today, can anyone guess how many Peace Corps volunteers there are? 7,533 Peace Corps volunteers serving in, anyone guess how many countries? 70 countries around the world, a number that would make President Kennedy very, very proud. And before our guest comes to the forum, we have a brief archival clip that I know many of you will enjoy. So if we can have the clip, let's just look at the birth of the Peace Corps.
The willingness of all Americans, men and women, young and old, to serve in the Peace Corps, to serve in all parts of the world, to serve at little pay, to do jobs that most of them have never done before, is one of the most encouraging manifestations of the American spirit that this country has seen in many years. The Peace Corps gives us a chance to show a side of our country which is too often submerged. Our desire to live in peace, our desire to be of help. I hope in the coming months and years that many of you will follow the example of those who've gone before. They, I think, are serving this country well. And in a very real sense, they are serving a larger cause, the cause of freedom and the cause of a peaceful world. They are demonstrating their interest in people who may live on the other side of the globe, who may live in poverty and misery, but who, because of the presence of the Peace Corps, live in hope. I hope this spirit will grow, and that hundreds of others of young Americans and older Americans will go overseas to show our best side, to show how much we desire to live at peace. There can be no greater service to our country, and no source of pride more real than to be a member of the Peace Corps of the United States. I hope that you will join.
Please welcome to the forum the 16th Director of the Peace Corps, Gaddy Vasquez.
Thank you very much, Professor, and ladies and gentlemen, I want to say that it's a great honor to be here. We flew in from Washington a little while ago, and it's great to be back on this campus where I had the privilege of completing some executive courses some years ago. But it's great to be back here, and I'm delighted that you have taken time out of your busy day. And of course, this is a busy place these days, and I'm a baseball fan, so I'm tracking developments very closely here. But let me just say that I have the great honor of serving as the 16th Director of the Peace Corps. It's a critical time in our history, and every time that I have an opportunity to review tapes and documents where President Kennedy is quoted on his vision of the Peace Corps, I am renewed in spirit and determination that if there was ever a time and an opportunity for the Peace Corps to grow its mission, to expand its reach, that time is now. In 1961, when President Kennedy established the Peace Corps and called for the establishment of the Peace Corps, there were some who doubted, some who said it won't work, it will be a disaster, it will create chaos. And certain references were made to the proposal that were not necessarily favorable. But it was the right vision, because 43 years later, 170,000 plus Americans have served in 135 countries throughout the world. Americans who have been willing to give up 2 years of their life, and in some cases more. We have some who are in their 12th and 13th year of service in the Peace Corps. In fact, a couple that is, I believe, on their 5th tour these days, and have remarked to me, the Peace Corps has become our RV, and we will continue to serve in the Peace Corps as long as we can. But it's indicative of the American spirit and the willingness of Americans to go overseas and promote global peace and friendship and understanding through training of men and women in host countries. So that vision has now arrived in the 21st century, and today, as was mentioned in the introduction, we are serving in 70 countries, over 7,500 volunteers, and a long list of countries that have requested Peace Corps programs. Our recruitment is up. This year, recruiting or applications are up 16% over last year. And I mention that because one of the most frequently asked questions of me is, do people still want to do Peace Corps work? Are people willing to go overseas to developing third world countries and train men and women? And the resounding answer is yes. Americans are willing to go overseas. The head of an African nation said to me not long ago, Mr. Director, I don't know why an American would leave the comforts of the United States and come to my country and sleep on a dirt floor with no electricity, no running water. But I'm glad they do. And we continue to progress in the 21st century with new and exciting programs. We're still involved in health and agriculture, education, teaching English. But now we've expanded into the area of HIV/AIDS with education and training in that sector with the hope of helping stem the wave of this pandemic that is afflicting so many regions and parts of the world. We are in countries like Botswana and Swaziland where 100% of the work that volunteers are doing is dedicated to education and prevention on the HIV/AIDS front. We are now developing programs in information technology to help advance countries in this digital age. We are now expanding into areas of community development, youth development programs. Countries that are young with large youth populations, whose young people are in dire need of education and training. And we continue to advance our programs like agriculture, helping farmers and ranchers and others in the agricultural field to expand and grow their productivity. But perhaps the greatest asset, I believe, of the Peace Corps is expanding and advancing the vision that President Kennedy had, and he just articulated in the tape that you saw, the second clip. And that is to basically, in my terms, put a face on America. And that is an important facet of Peace Corps work, promoting cross-cultural understanding and putting a face on Americans. And I believe that that's important today because on one particular occasion, I had a personal experience in Morocco, which reminded me of the value and the importance of this priority. As I was leaving a mosque in Casablanca, and a young Moroccan man stopped me and he said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from the United States." And he started asking me about life in America and transportation and housing and life in America in general. And about mid-conversation, he stopped me and he said, "You don't look like an American." I said, "What do you mean I don't look like an American? Why do you say I don't look like an American?" And he said, "Because of the color of your skin. You don't look like an American." And it gave me the opportunity to describe to him how my grandparents had come to the United States from Mexico in pursuit of their dreams and hopes and aspirations. And I was able to share with him that America is made up of people of all colors, of all backgrounds, all origins, different faiths, a wide range of population. He needed to understand that. And that's what Peace Corps volunteers are doing in the 21st century, continuing to build on that legacy that so many have built before them over the last 43 years, but putting a face on America. We just opened a program in Mexico for the first time in history 2 weeks ago. The average age of the volunteer in that first group is 45 years of age. PhDs, master's degrees in various disciplines. But here's the striking thing. 4 of those volunteers were born in foreign countries, overseas. One was born in the Czech Republic, Iran, India, and Armenia. Peace Corps volunteers who were born in other countries, who became United States citizens, who today are helping advance this understanding, the communication, and the education that we are now able to provide in the collaborative efforts that are being undertaken in Mexico. In Botswana a few weeks ago, the privilege of meeting volunteers, one born in Israel, one born in Russia, and 3 other countries, Liberia, Nigeria, and Cape Verde. U.S. Peace Corps volunteers who were born in other countries, who are now working in 3rd countries as Peace Corps volunteers. Able to share, able to work, able to collaborate, able to make a difference. And Peace Corps does make a difference. Because one of the great legacies of Peace Corps is not only impacting men and women at the grassroots level, but building a legacy that sometimes doesn't bear the fruit or results of the labor until years or sometimes decades later. Example, President Alejandro Toledo of Peru, the current president of that country. As a young man growing up in his village, 2 volunteers came to his community and investigated the possibility of renting a living quarters from his family. And they moved to that village and they became friends with then Alejandro Toledo, a very young man, and taught him through his youth. Remained friends and helped him gain admission to a college in California. And he ultimately went on to graduate from Stanford. And lo and behold, years later, he would be elected president of his country. And President Toledo has said that he cannot be objective about the Peace Corps because the Peace Corps changed his life. The volunteers made an impact. And one of the very first things that he did when he was elected president of Peru was to invite the Peace Corps to reestablish a program in Peru after a 25-year-plus absence from that country. And 2 of the people that he invited to his inauguration in Lima, Peru, were those 2 volunteers, Nancy and Joel, who came to his inauguration to celebrate his accomplishment. or the vice president of Paraguay, who I visited a few weeks ago, who recounted how his father, as he was growing up, was an admirer of President John Kennedy and admired the vision that the president had and the articulation of Peace Corps. And that years later, lo and behold, he would be taught in middle school by Peace Corps volunteers. So in his mind, the contributions that have been made in his life are significant, but the contributions that have been made in his country over the years of service of volunteers in Paraguay are also quite remarkable. So in the 21st century, we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to grow and to expand the Peace Corps because Americans are willing to serve. The numbers would so indicate. And I want to salute Harvard because Harvard has produced over 1,100 Peace Corps volunteers who have served throughout the world. And 24 of your students are serving today in the Peace Corps. And we appreciate that because it's important and it's vital to our time and it's vital to the future. So the second part of my message is that the world is inviting Peace Corps. I have a list back in Washington of 27 countries who have requested Peace Corps programs where programs do not exist today. 13 of those countries are Muslim countries. 20% of our volunteers currently serve in Muslim countries. We are extending ourselves to places where we've never been, but we also have an opportunity to expand even further in the 21st century. And I'd like to say that as director of the Peace Corps, I have supply, I have demand, and now I just need appropriations from Congress. And we are working hard. While we have been funded at all-time historic levels in the last 2 years, we need to do more because we can do more, because the world is asking for more. And so we have a grand opportunity. And I will begin to close and summarize by saying to you that a few weeks ago I had the opportunity to be in Thailand and visited a village where an American Peace Corps volunteer is helping a group of women who are in the process of building a small production facility where they grow, package, and sell peanuts. Insignificant as it may sound, it is helping revolutionize the lives of these women and this community because it is generating income, it is generating opportunity, it is generating hope, and it is American volunteers who are helping shepherd that progress and that opportunity. I was in Cajamarca, in Peru, not long ago. We're up in the mountains. A man who has been designing and selling ceramic reproductions of various art has had a very limited scope of sales until an American Peace Corps volunteer arrived into that community. And he personally shared with me and said the day that this volunteer arrived here was the day my life changed. Because today he is able to sell his products in markets and in places and use the internet and use technology to sell his product and send it to places he could only dream of just a short time ago. But today he is employing others who live in the village and in the community, whose lives are also changed. And the legacy that is left is that it was American Peace Corps volunteer. A volunteer who embraces the vision of reaching out and helping others. Legacy is an important facet of Peace Corps work. The very first trip I took overseas was to Afghanistan, a little over 2 years ago. And I met with the Minister of Women's Affairs in Afghanistan, Deputy Prime Minister. And as I began to share with her about the Peace Corps and the kind of work that we do at the Peace Corps, she stopped me. And she says, Mr. Director, you don't need to tell me about the Peace Corps. It was Peace Corps volunteers who taught me English the last time the Peace Corps was in Afghanistan. So what I want to say with all of this is that the Peace Corps, 43 years later, remains strong, it remains vibrant, it remains relative, and it remains very, very important. Because while it is important to train men and women in host countries, while it is important to launch an all-out assault on the pandemic of HIV/AIDS, the value of putting a face on America at a time when the American image overseas is suffering and has taken a bit of a battering, we have the opportunity to make a difference. And Americans are stepping up Americans, men and women, and I might add that 60% of all of the volunteers in the Peace Corps are women. That's just the way it is. Used to be 60-40 males just a few years ago, and it's shifted, and the trend continues to grow with women who are making a difference throughout the world as Peace Corps volunteers, and men continue to make a significant contribution as well. But the most important thing that I see happening in the Peace Corps is that we have greater diversity in the Peace Corps. More Latinos, more Asian Americans, more African Americans are serving in the Peace Corps. More couples, more older Americans, more retirees. And to those of you who maybe served in the Peace Corps and remember your time of service, to hear me say that the average age of an incoming trainee group is 45 is a significant change from the profile that maybe some have been accustomed to in the past. But it's an opportunity that we have in our time. So I want to encourage you and hope that you will consider and evaluate the prospects of being a Peace Corps volunteer. I've always said that a Peace Corps volunteer is a man, is a woman, who is not content to be a spectator, but wants to be a participant in shaping a new world, in making the world a better place, in making a difference. Many of our former Peace Corps volunteers have gone on to remarkable careers in public service. Senator Chris Dodd of Connecticut. Currently, there are 4 members of the House of Representatives who served as volunteers. Chris Matthews of MSNBC, a volunteer in Swaziland. Maureen Orth, a journalist, well known. And so many others who have gone on to productive. Bob Hawes, the chairman of Levi Strauss, both in business, the NGO world, private sector, and public life. And I was recently told that according to the Foreign Service Institute, about 25% of the men and women in the Foreign Service are returned Peace Corps volunteers. Men and women who have decided to continue their careers in public service, and they're doing great and honorable work. So I would encourage you to consider the possibility of making a difference, of being more than a spectator, and being a participant in helping shape a new world. While I was traveling recently, I saw a poster that caught my eye. It was a picture of Earth, probably taken from the space shuttle or a satellite. And it was just a distant picture, and the caption beneath it said, "Our home address." And it got me to thinking that that's why our work is so important, because this is our home address. And it's a home address for everyone on this planet. We need to make it a better place. And the Peace Corps is committed and poised, positioned, and anxious to make the world a better place. And I hope you'll consider Peace Corps service. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director Vasquez. The director will now be available to take your questions. And for those of you who are not familiar with the format here, there are 2 microphones, one on either side. We'd ask you to please step up to the microphone and introduce yourself and say where you're from in the Harvard community. You might add whether you've been a Peace Corps volunteer if you have. And please keep your questions brief, and ideally there should be a question mark at the end of a question. So, do we have a first question? You'd like to step up to the microphone?
Hi, thanks very much for coming in. Jed Weiss, I'm a 97 graduate of the college. I don't really have any more than anecdotal evidence for this, but it seems like a higher percentage of applicants today, or accepted applicants, have more practical skills, engineering degrees, skills of that sort, versus, say, English degrees or political science degrees. I'm curious why that is, what are the reasons behind that, and is it if there was greater funding for the Peace Corps, are there opportunities for folks with less skill-oriented degrees, or is it just, by far the most useful applicants tend to have those skills?
Well, the first principle of the Peace Corps is that we recruit for the purposes of filling the jobs that countries that we're in request. I mean, there are skill sets and requirements and background and education that some countries may request of us. However, I'm not sure that the statistics would indicate necessarily that we are recruiting for the purposes of specialized skills, because one of the things that I did not mention in my remarks is, and I think to illustrate this, is that we have launched an effort to recruit at community college levels, which is something that we have not historically done. And the reason for that is that we want to broaden our horizons to recruit and to retain volunteers who have the array of training, education, and background, and in some cases just life experience, because there is no requirement in the Peace Corps to have a college degree. And there are in fact volunteers who serve without college degrees, but who may have vocational, personal life experience in terms of training. I mean, there are people who have never gone to college, who've run very successful companies, who know how to develop business plans and whatnot, and we look to those profiles as well. So we continue to cast a pretty wide net.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Pam King Petrat. I'm a MPAID second year, and I was a Peace Corps volunteer, an IT Peace Corps volunteer actually in Guyana, South America. I finished in 2001. My father actually learned English from a Peace Corps volunteer in Thailand, and then moved here, and I grew up here. My two questions. One question is autonomy. Given the fact that the USAID office is now subsumed under the State Department, I think as a Peace Corps volunteer, I'm still really concerned about how autonomous Peace Corps will continue to be, because I think it's critical to our mission in the field. And number two, security, another issue. The volunteer in Bolivia that left and the GAO accounting office that went through Peace Corps finances due to security issues. How is Peace Corps addressing that as well? Especially given the war on terror and how us in the field definitely had to deal with on a day-to-day basis. One-third Muslim country that I served in as well. It was one-third Muslim, one-third Christian, and one-third Hindu. So there was definitely a threat. So how are you guys dealing with that?
Well, thank you for that question. Number one is that the issue of autonomy is a very important issue, and it's a very high priority for me as the director of the agency. The Peace Corps is an independent agency within the executive branch of the United States government. The President of the United States, President Bush, has stated repeatedly that that needs to be preserved, that independence needs to be preserved. Congress has affirmed repeatedly that that needs to be affirmed. We're all in agreement that one of the unique aspects of the Peace Corps is that independence, because it allows us to focus on our work and not be engaged or involved or immersed in any other facets of agendas or purposes that other governmental agencies may have. And I know that I remain deeply committed to that, and it's important. On the issue of safety and security, we have embarked on a massive overhaul of the safety and security process at the Peace Corps, to the extent that volunteers have now said to me, can we get off the safety and security stuff? Enough already. Well, the reality is that we continue to be vigilant. During my time as director of the Peace Corps, I have overseen 7 evacuations of 7 different countries. Everything from evacuating volunteers due to SARS in China, to unrest in Madagascar, to unrest in Cote d'Ivoire, to unrest in Haiti. What I will tell you is that our safety and security processes have worked in each of those instances. We test our communications processes, we test our planning processes, and we do not take risks. We most recently evacuated Nepal because of safety and security considerations. And so we remain very, very vigilant in that process. As you know, because you've served as a volunteer, there is always an element of risk. But I suspect there's probably an element of risk not too far from here, and that's just the way that things are sometimes. What we encourage volunteers to do is to adopt a lifestyle and personal practices of vigilance, and as you know, host communities are a very strong layer of security, because in some communities we've had multiple generations of volunteers, and so there's a strong bond between the volunteer and the community, so it remains the highest priority. Thanks for your question.
Welcome, thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Tanuj Diora. I'm a returned Peace Corps volunteer from Jamaica, served from 2002 to 2004, and I'm a current student at the business school. My question for you, I was president of the Volunteer Advisory Committee in Jamaica, VAC, and one of the issues that we had a lot of difficulties trying to instigate some changes, especially dealing with a staff that was predominantly host country nationals. And I was curious, in the Peace Corps, what kind of programs and what kind of efforts are made for making change, for taking volunteer feedback and going back and making improvements into the organization?
Thanks for that question. We have, elevated the profiles of the VACs in countries throughout the Peace Corps world because the Volunteer Advisory Council is made up of volunteers who provide us feedback on both operational issues, programmatic issues, basically an opportunity to provide very clear feedback. And one thing I will say about Peace Corps volunteers, and those of you that have served, I think you will affirm this for me, is that volunteers never hesitate to express an opinion or a view on how we can make things better. And so what we have tried to do is to start addressing staff development with host country national staff, so that there's a better understanding and a constant and refreshing of understanding that the volunteer is the highest priority in posts and working in country. And by doing so, we're trying to elevate the sensitivity to some of the issues that are evolving as the Peace Corps begins to evolve. To illustrate my point, as the Peace Corps begins to diversify, when you see more ethnic diversity in the Peace Corps, greater diversity in age, the way that country staff manages or handles or oversees training for volunteers and whatnot needs to be adjusted, needs to be a partnership of collaboration between the volunteers and the host country national staff. So that's an ongoing process, but we have elevated both the visibility and the input of the VAC to make it and integrate it into part of the planning processes that we are doing for countries throughout the Peace Corps world. But training and development of staff at the host country national level has become a very high priority for us along the lines of what you've just described.
Go up there to you. Go up there and then come down here again.
Hi, my name is Becky Chacko, RPCV Cameroon, 2000-2002.
Thanks for your service.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could do it over again, do you think you would serve as a Peace Corps volunteer before becoming director of the Peace Corps? And how do you think the fact that you haven't served has affected the way that you've led the Peace Corps? And lastly, would you consider being a Peace Corps volunteer in the future? And have you encouraged President Bush to do the same?
Well, let me just say that I am the son of migrant farm working parents. I was raised in conditions of great poverty. Those of you that know and have studied the life of the farm worker in America, particularly the migrant farm worker, it's a very difficult lifestyle. I am the first person to graduate from college. I have admired the Peace Corps since childhood. I watched commercials, and I was always fascinated by this concept that you could go overseas to help people and to make an impact. But I was not in a position economically, because I think anyone who's a first-generation college graduate understands that when you're the first one out of the blocks, your parents have an expectation. And that expectation is that you will help your siblings and help your family to achieve better economic standing. So had I had the opportunity and conditions had been different, absolutely, because my interest in serving as director of the Peace Corps was one that I expressed uniquely. I had no interest in any other position in the administration. This is the position that I aspired to and was hoping for, because I believe in the mission of the Peace Corps. I know what it is to live in poverty. I lived in poverty. In my office in Washington is a picture of me and my dad standing in front of the trailer that sat on dirt in Watsonville, California. And it's, if you ever come to Washington, I'll be glad to show it to you. And it's sitting next to the picture of my swearing-in ceremony in the Oval Office. And it's to remind me where I came from. I lived in third world conditions. I suffered and had difficult times. So I have a deep appreciation for poverty and all that it brings. And so for me, it was a unique opportunity that I wouldn't trade a day. Don't get me wrong, I'm not apologizing for growing up in a migrant family, but I will also say to you that I would look forward to the prospects and the possibilities. And would I consider serving? Absolutely. But I will tell you that I've dedicated my heart and soul. I've traveled to 35 countries in 2.5 plus years, and I find this to be the most rewarding job I have ever had in my career. And as for the question on the president, I'll pose that question at the next opportunity. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, my name is Carolyn Nelbandian. I just wanted to say, I think what you're doing, you and your group are doing, sounds wonderful.
Thank you.
My concern is, I feel that our newspapers and our television cover wars and deaths and violence, and aren't or don't focus enough on this kind of thing. I wonder what we could do to perhaps change that.
Well, we have embarked on a campaign that we refer to as reacquainting America with the Peace Corps. Because a lot of times when we mention Peace Corps and you mention it to people, the most often reaction is, oh yeah, the Peace Corps, it's great. Yeah, I remember when President Kennedy announced it, it's terrific. And then is it still around? To your point, because of the visibility or the lack of visibility. Notwithstanding that, having said we've reached historic highs, but we can do so much more and we can do so much better. Particularly in ethnic minority communities, the Peace Corps has a very, very low profile, and in some cases it's virtually non-existent. We need to advance that. We've asked for dollars, for appropriated dollars to be able to elevate the visibility of the Peace Corps, not only in the United States, and I'm talking about, we don't buy, as an example, we don't buy radio or television time because we don't have the dollars to do that. Other agencies of the government have large budgets for purchased advertising and marketing. We use public service announcements. We have many people who do make contributions to our global Peace Corps fund, but it is an ongoing challenge for us, and we're trying to secure dollars so that we can begin to purchase radio and television time. The other thing that we've also evaluated is how we raise the visibility of Peace Corps in host countries. Because volunteers have said to me, we're here, we're working in the country, but a lot of people in the country don't even know we're here. And so that's a very valid issue that we're also trying to address. And frankly, it comes down to strategy, which we've developed, but the funding to be able to do that as well. So it's a very high priority.
I'm from Derry, or Londonderry, in Northern Ireland.
Yes, ma'am.
And for years, Northern Ireland has suffered from violent conflict.
Suffered from?
Violent conflict.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Between Catholics and Protestants, between nationalists and unionists, between loyalists and Republicans. Now, some years after peace funding programming has come in to Northern Ireland through European sources, and we're looking in the face in the next few years of that ceasing. I have not heard of Peace Corps work in Northern Ireland. There are communities on both sides of the divide that still suffer from low education achievements, from high illiteracy, from a lack of a tradition of education in their families, and also from a lack of business acumen and how to get out of the poverty. And we talk about third world countries, but Northern Ireland is in the Western world. It's in Europe. It's the same language, and it has a lot of cultural links and relationships between Ireland and America. And so the Peace Corps has a job to play in Northern Ireland in terms of linking communities together and working with youth violence as a result of years of violent conflict. Can you tell me if the Peace Corps has been at work in Northern Ireland without me knowing? And if it hasn't, then I would welcome and invite Peace Corps workers into my city, Derry, Londonderry, where they're needed, and even more so, they're needed in Belfast.
Well, thank you for the question. Let me just say to you that Peace Corps has a process for sending volunteers to a country. And the first is that we have to receive an invitation from the host government of a country in order for us to evaluate whether or not we are in a position to provide volunteers. After the invitation arrives in Washington, we evaluate it in the context of our overall priorities and countries that have requests in at this time. And then we send an assessment team to the country to evaluate programmatic opportunities, security issues, medical issues, and evaluate the potential for infrastructure to support volunteers, and then a decision is made. So the first steps would be the formality of an invitation, and then the possibility of sending an assessment team. So I can't make a pledge or a commitment to you here, but that is the process, and we certainly would welcome any discussion.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name's Martina. I'm a returned Peace Corps volunteer from Belize, and I'm at the business school. And mine actually has a follow-up question on different processes. How do you evaluate when you're going to exit a country, especially given the conflict of interest that in-country staff doesn't want to see Peace Corps necessarily go, the pressure that you have now from Washington, D.C. to grow, because the majority of Belizean volunteers felt like we'd been there 40 years. There was problems. And then the second part of my question was also, are you going to control growth going forward? Are there any metrics that you use, volunteers per capita or something like that, so that you won't have 70 of your countries now with 3,000 volunteers on the streets?
Yes, the first part is that we have established a new process at Peace Corps to evaluate the progress and the successes of programs on a country-by-country basis. And this is a newly instituted process wherein we will look at countries on an individual basis to look at where we are successful, where we are tracking in the right direction programmatically and otherwise, safety, security, all of the things that are required to run a successful Peace Corps program. The other thing that we're doing that you may have participated in is the Volunteer Global Survey. The survey that we conducted of volunteers used to be, is still today a global survey, but it's now been narrowed to doing it on a country-by-country basis, so that we are able then now to track and identify any trends that would suggest that a country or the volunteers in country are providing feedback that, maybe the program has reached its usefulness in country, or that it needs to be reevaluated in terms of how it's administered, how it's managed, whether it's a change in program emphasis that we need to undertake. So we're putting new steps in place to evaluate things on a country-by-country basis, both on the basis of surveys, but also doing it through a process of evaluation, both in Washington and with the country directors to measure our successes. So we evaluate countries on an ongoing basis. In terms of growing the Peace Corps, it is my strong belief, and I have used the following two principles as the guiding principles for me as I make decisions about where to expand, how to expand, and where to grow. And one is that we must consistently work to preserve the quality of the Peace Corps volunteer experience. To grow just to grow is not healthy. It's not productive. For me, it's not a numbers game. It's about the quality of the volunteer experience, and secondly, it's an issue of safety and security. And I say that because we do not want to be in countries where volunteers spend any considerable part of their time worried about safety and security issues. And when those kinds of things do occur, as they did occur most recently in Nepal, I've taken action to remove the volunteers and then identify whether or not there's opportunity to return, and if not, then to move those resources to other parts or other countries throughout the world. Thanks for the question.
Hi, I'm a returned Peace Corps volunteer from the Dominican Republic in 2000 to 2002 and a student at the Graduate School of Education. For me, one of the most meaningful and important experiences in my service was the solidarity I felt with my fellow volunteers and also the Dominicans I lived and worked with in the aftermath of September 11th, 2001. Yet at the same time, one of the most disturbing experiences I had was watching that feeling of solidarity dissipate in the period afterwards and up to today. With the waging of the war on terrorism, you probably have heard the criticism that the current administration's foreign policy effectively cancels out the good work that Peace Corps volunteers are doing around the world. And I'm wondering, in your visits with staff and volunteers around the world, how you've processed their responses to this criticism and how you've reconciled for yourself and for the administration these questions.
Well, I can look at you with frankness and tell you very sincerely that 35 countries, and I've visited with thousands of volunteers, that I've never heard a volunteer, not one, say to me directly that they have felt that their work has been diminished or depleted by virtue of what's been going on in the world. I will tell you that the countries in which volunteers serve, both at the volunteer level and also at the staff level and at the governmental levels of host countries, continue to be very positive, continue to be very supportive. I'll give you one example. I was visited recently by the foreign minister of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, who came to visit me to reiterate to me that the government appreciates the Peace Corps, wishes that the Peace Corps will stay and expand in the future. And those accounts are repeated over and over and over again, where countries want to see the continuation and the expansion of the Peace Corps. We've recently returned volunteers to Jordan, returned volunteers to Morocco, and as I mentioned, about 20% of the volunteers serving today are serving in Muslim countries, and we continue to enjoy great success. Of those 27 countries, 13 of them are Muslim countries that are requesting programs. So the indicators are positive, and I'm not suggesting that there aren't those who have some concerns, but I think by and large we have not seen any manifestation or any articulation of anyone believing or thinking or feeling like the work, the productive, meaningful work that is being done at the grassroots, people-to-people level is somehow being diminished or devalued by virtue of what's going on in the world. Thank you. Okay.
Hi, my name is Natalie Orr. I'm a junior at the college, thinking about the Peace Corps. I'm interested in the distribution of your goals and projects abroad, specifically Latin America, between, say, housing projects, education, training, etc., and also whether changes in the international situation would change that distribution of goals.
As I mentioned earlier, when we establish programs in countries, the programs that are designed, whether they be agriculture, information technology, health, education, those programs are designed based on consultations, as the volunteers who are here would tell you, are based on consultations with either the ministry that we work with, because typically in a country we're aligned with a certain ministry in the country. Sometimes it's the Ministry of Education, sometimes it's Ministry of the Environment, etc. In Mexico, it's with the Office of Science and Technology. And so what we do is that we identify the program priorities. If we're starting up a program, we evaluate program priorities as we go forward in countries, and those are developed on a country-by-country basis. Because I think it's important to maintain that agility so that you can adapt and make changes and self-corrections when they need to be made on a programmatic side. So that is something that we do, and we do regularly. In terms of Latin America, I think that one of the areas that two of the areas that I see us expanding is information technology. But I will also tell you that HIV/AIDS education and prevention, and I think the gentleman who served in the Dominican Republic, he would be able to attest that that is an area of concern that is growing. It's growing throughout the Caribbean, throughout Latin America, and so we will probably be seeing some expansion of that effort going forward. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Brendan Sanemont. I'm a return Peace Corps volunteer from Niger, just come back in April.
Is there anyone here who is not a return Peace Corps volunteer?
And I had a great experience, but one of the more troubling aspects of my time there was funding for projects. You know, I think correctly, that to grow just to grow is not a valid thing. And so when Peace Corps was doubled, I went right after September 11th. I was in Niger, and Peace Corps was doubled, and we came to 150 volunteers, but we still only had $15,000 for 150 volunteers. So I mean, the math is. It's pretty bad. And I was wondering, realistically, two questions. First, realistically, do you think in the near term that project funding will be expanded enough? I know this is only one of many of Peace Corps' volunteers, but do you think that will be expanded in your tenure? And second of all, when it comes to delegating the project money and who actually controls the purse strings, do you think that the process will be more decentralized than it is currently right now? Thank you.
Well, the first one I think I can start to answer. The second one is a difficult question because the framework for a lot of these things is still being designed. But the general answer is I do believe that there will be expanded project money available in the future. We are working strategically with USAID, which, as you know probably from your service, is a source of funding for some of the projects. But during my tenure, I placed a very high priority on raising private dollars, donor dollars, for projects for what's called the Peace Corps Global Fund. And I'm pleased to tell you that this year, that fund broke $1 million in contributions. Now that's important because those are the dollars that we use for those projects that volunteers submit proposals for. And those of you who've served, you know what I'm talking about. You submit your proposal, you send it in, and it may be $200, $300, $500. But the fact that we've achieved over I think it's $1.4 million this year is a big achievement, and we want to build that up. Because we've seen an increase in the number of donors who are giving dollars to that fund. The third thing I would say is in the area of HIV/AIDS, President Bush's proposal, the 5-year, $15 billion proposal for HIV/AIDS in terms of the PEPFAR program, as it's called, principally in Africa, the Peace Corps was included in the language to be funded up to $15 million, separate and apart from our base budget. And in this first year, countries, and I think Niger was one of the countries that put a proposal together, if I'm not mistaken, those proposals total in year one almost $1.5 million. And that's project money for volunteers to do their HIV/AIDS projects at the grassroots level. So in general, I can say that the indicators, the trends would suggest that the monies are going to be expanding, are going to be available. But like anything else, and I might also add the Digital Freedom Initiative in terms of the technology front. Those kinds of funding sources are also going to be available. But like everyone else, we have to navigate through those processes, and we want to make it as efficient as we can so that by the time the volunteer sees the opportunity to seek funding, it does not become a process where you have to submit voluminous documents to try to secure $1,500 for a project, because that's a disincentive, that's discouraging. So we're very conscious of the need to streamline the process, to keep the process intact in a way that the money is readily accessible. But we're improving on a number of fronts, and I do believe and am hopeful that area will improve because we've tried to be more efficient in how we distribute the dollars, particularly the money that we have discretion over. And I might tell you that the global fund that we have at Peace Corps is 100% pass-through. That is to say, if you donate to that fund goes to projects. We don't take percentages off the top for administrative costs and whatnot. It's a pass-through. So thank you for that question. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Director Vasquez. As a budget professor, I have to tell you that you know that we spend about $300 million a year on the Peace Corps, close to $500 billion a year on all military and defense-related matters, and that will be the same regardless of who's elected in November. So I think we all can look forward to the day when that gap closes a little bit more, and we are very fortunate to have such an articulate and committed person helping to close that gap. Before we conclude and before I invite the audience to join a reception behind the stage in honor of Director Vasquez and Hispanic Heritage Month, I would like to invite Harvard students Paloma Cepeda, the political chair of Harvard Raza and Latinas Unidas, and Raudel Yanez, president of Harvard Raza, to come to the stage to make a special presentation. Welcome, Paloma and Raudel.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight. You've all heard Director Vasquez has shown exemplary dedication to improving the world we live in, and has had relentless commitment to public service in education, in business, and in government. Harvard College Raza was founded in 1973, and in that time span of over 30 years, we have given the Lucha Award only twice. This is the third time the Lucha Award will be given for exemplary public service to Gaddy Vasquez. If you could join me in congratulating Director Vasquez.
Thank you very much, ladies. Thank you so much. Very kind. Thank you.
Is there?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we invite all of you to come behind the curtain and join us for a drink and a chat with Director Vasquez. You will meet all of you. It seems like it's a reunion, a Peace Corps reunion, so welcome to everybody.